I'm pretty sure we're recording, so we should be good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special panel brought to you by www.spiraken.com, and hope you're doing well. For those of you who went to Otakon 2024, I hope you had a blast. And for Otakon, congratulations on your 30th anniversary. 30 years in the game, can you believe it? So, unfortunately, Greta and myself were unable to do Otakon this year because we both contracted COVID, which kind of blows, but don't worry about it. As I promised, we are doing a virtual version of this. This is actually the second version because the first one was taken down because of copyright issues. But worry not. Let's get to it, shall we? Because I'm excited to do this panel and it's going to be a blast. And this one we really worked hard on. So let's get to it, shall we? Because, warning, this panel is going to contain manga recommendations, a variety of art styles, different genres, history trivia, and fun commentary. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Listener and panel attendee viewer discussion is advised, and this is a panel brought to you by Otakon and Spiraken, and we're going to bring it to you right now. So let's get started with manga recommendations from the last 30 years for grown-ups. This is a panel which is celebrating the last 30 years of manga, and well, let's get to it. So what is this panel about? Well, this panel is a way to celebrate Otakon's last 30 years by going over the years one by one and going over the various mangas that were released this year that were designed for adults and for, well, some of the most impressionable and influential manga, as well as ones which are really awesome as well. And this is an examination of how manga has changed over the last 30 years. Art styles have changed, the actual concepts have changed, what they were actually talking about has evolved, and more importantly, how things have been done. Also, this is a way to remember some of the great series that many of us forgot about. There are so many manga that everyone forgets because it's been 10 years, 15 years, 7 years, and as time passes, we get tons and tons of new manga, so this is going to be refreshing some of you, and this is going to be a great discussion of this. Also, this is an excuse to celebrate some of our favorite manga series, and there are tons of them which are amazing that I've loved talking about for years. So we're going to be actually getting to this. But let's actually get into the last part, which is this is giving everyone an excuse to have tons of manga recommendations. These are all mangas that are readily available for the most part. I'll be talking about all of this, and also we will be having a list of these on our website, www.spiraken.com. Remember to like, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications, and more importantly, leave comments down below. And beforehand, let's get to that big important question of who the hell is this guy that is talking to you? Well, the guy that is talking to you is me. And who am I? Well, I am, as I said earlier, Zan Villanueva. I am a podcaster, manga reviewer. I've been doing this since 2008 and a panelist since 2010. My first Otakon was actually in the 20th anniversary, so 10 years ago. And I've been to this convention since it started. Well, not started. Well, when it first was at Baltimore, and I've been going since it went to Washington, D.C., and I've loved this convention. Like I said, it's a shame not to be there, but I don't want to get anybody sick, and that's the thing is we want to protect all of us, so let's get with it. And finally, last but not least, something a little more important, some of my favorite manga. My favorite manga are Ranma 1/2. That was my gateway manga. I love GTO, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and then Osamu Tezuka's Blackjack, the story of the underground sergeant with the hands of the gods. But from here, let's actually get started, shall we? Because we've got a long way to go and not a lot of time to talk. So we're going to be going back all the way back. Turn the clock back all the way back to 1994. Yes, 1994. And in 1994, a lot of things happened in this year. First off, some of the major events that occurred included Lion King was the #1 film of all time of the year. The PlayStation 1 was released. Also, Nelson Mandela, who was a political prisoner, became the president of South Africa. Bill Clinton was in his second year of office as president of the United States. The first smartphone was released. And some other dire news. O.J. Simpson was being chased by the police in L.A. in a Ford Bronco after he was accused of killing his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her lover, Ron Goldman. And then last and certainly not least, we had Nancy Kerrigan, who was in the Olympics, and her controversy involving hiring someone to beat up Nancy Kerrigan. This was a crazy time. Also, during this time, I was a young man who was not a fan of manga and anime yet, but I was just getting into my paces. And let's get to it, because the bigger thing is the influential manga of 1994 that still exists to this day is Rurouni Kenshin, the story of the Hitakori Batosai, which has stood the test of time with tons of adaptations, a recently rebooted anime series, a great live action series, and despite the fact that there is some issues with the mangaka himself, this series was a benchmark and a great story of a pacifist who's fighting against evil. And one other fun fact, when I first went to Otakon that first year, they were actually debuting the live action film. So it was kind of cool to see that there. And let's actually get to the first manga recommendation for grown-ups that we have. And this one is really cool. We're talking about Naoki Urasawa's Monster. This is a psychological drama involving a Japanese doctor in 1988 Germany, in West Germany. And he is a Dr. Kenzo Tenma, a neurosurgeon and the head of neurosurgeon in Dusseldorf, Germany. And he is engaged to the director's daughter. He is on the way to publishing some paperwork, and life is going good. Until an event happens where he has to make a choice to save a young child who has a bullet wound in his head, or the mayor who had a heart attack, and it is tax time, and it is time for budget renewal, so he may want to renew the company that's going to save him. So he has this dilemma. And many people says that not all people's lives are equal, we should focus on the rich, but Dr. Tenma decides to save this child. The mayor dies, and this leads to him losing his position, losing his fiancée, and life not going well. Unfortunately, due to some circumstances, the people who benefited from him being fired, or not fired, demoted, end up dead. The kid disappears, and Dr. Tenma's life takes a turn, as he is now involved with the fact that he may have saved a monster from dying, and he now has to find the child that he saved, who's now a homicidal maniac, and stop him. This is a mixture of The Fugitive and, and ER. There's medical elements to it. There's even a little bit of The Incredible Hulk with one of the greatest characters in this. But this is the story of Dr. Tenma trying to right the wrong that he did by saving this child who is a sociopath. And it is a great character study that focuses on these two characters. From here, let's go to something a little bit more sci-fi and more relaxing. We're talking about Yokohama Kadaishi Kiko. This was written by Hitoshi Ashinano, and this is the story of Alpha. And this is Alpha as she goes through the world during the twilight of humanity, because the world is coming to an end. We don't know why. It's an environmental crisis, but as opposed to us fighting it, we're just going down with the ship and just relaxing. And Alpha is a gynoid, a female robot that's able to eat vegetables, and it's her observing the world while working at her cafe, Cafe Alpha. This is a beautiful story of just someone observing humanity as they're fading out. And for her, what seems like one day could be a year for a person. She ages differently, and she's a witness to humanity's greatness and niceness. And the art is beautiful in this as it goes over all the elements to it. Something as simple as her going to get more coffee and discovering, oh, this road was flooded. It wasn't like this last time being 6 years ago. Or we have characters that she meets as children, and then the next time she sees them, they're married with children of their own. This is, like I said, a celebration of the melancholy in humanity's decline. And it is one of those stories which is well written, it is well done. It's released as an omnibus with 4 volumes, and it is something which is truly worth checking out. Our honorable mention for 1994 is going to be Kyoko Okazaki's River's Edge. Now, for those who don't know, Kyoko Okazaki is one of the queens of Josei, manga written for women over the age of 18. And this is the story of a group of high school students who find a dead body and how it impacts them as they're dealing with the trials and tribulations of life. This is a story which does not pull its punches. It has a lot of elements which are slightly disturbing. Unfortunately, I don't want to get into some of the elements because this is an honorable mention. But definitely worth checking out. Just be aware this is going to be a rough ride. So let's move on forward to 1995. Yes, 1995, the year that I discovered manga officially, when I found Ranma 1/2 and it inspired me to be the manga nut that I am. This was a great year. And the most influential manga of 1995 was Trigun, the first of the Cowboy series. Contrary to belief, everyone thinks Cowboy Bebop was the first. It was not. It was Trigun. Then next year would be Outlaw Star, and the year after that would be the manga version of Cowboy Bebop. Yes, Cowboy Bebop started out as a manga. But for those of you who are unaware, Trigun, the story of Vash the Stampede, the 60 billion double dollar man, a pacifist gunslinger on the planet Gunsmoke who loves peace and love, and unfortunately he is blamed for everything that has gone wrong on this planet because of various reasons. He doesn't do anything wrong, it's just everyone trying to hurt him keeps causing problems. And this is him as he is going through planet Gunsmoke while being pursued by not only a pair of insurance agents, but also a gun-toting priest, the Gung Ho Guns, a group of assassins who have been hired by Vash's brother to take care of him one way or the other, and all of the insanity on this planet. A great story of cowboys, aliens, some cool technology, and more importantly, some amazing artwork. This is getting re-released by Dark Horse Comics, and it is one of those ones which is worth getting. I cannot wait for the special edition to come out. But let's actually get to our manga releases for the year. And for 95, the first one is another Kyoko Okazaki. We're talking about Helter Skelter, Fashion Unfriendly. This is a josei story about the very difficult world of fashion and fashion models. It's the story of Lilico, a model who is reaching her 29th birthday, and in the modeling world, that means she's an old hag, and she's trying to stay relevant in a world which wants younger, wants prettier. Even though she is a beautiful woman, she can't see herself as that because they say, oh, you're old. So she is, well, trying to exist in this world and try to stay relevant through any means possible. Everything from taking more risque purposes, blackmailing clients by sleeping with them and then getting the position they want, or, dare I say, going into more disturbing elements like getting surgery, and then the problems with getting surgery where, oh, she paid for a cheap surgery and now it's, well, getting rotten. This leads her through this insane story of the ups and downs of aging out of the modeling industry and the lengths you will go to stay relevant. This is a tragic story. It is a real story, and it is one of those ones which you will keep reading because you want it to have a better ending. But this is a car accident. You are watching the car crash into the other car, and there is nothing you can do but hold on and watch it. Let's go to something a little bit happier and different. We're talking about Neighborhood Story. This is by Ai Aizawa. This is the first of her trilogy of really great manga, and this is one which focuses on two people, two kids who are friends, one of them who looks like a very famous pop star, and the other one who wants to design clothes. This is the prequel to Paradise Kiss, and what can I say except that Miyoko and Ken, they are a great group of characters who deal with some insane things. I'm going to be doing a review of this later, so I'm not going to spoil too much. If you want to check that out, check out our website, www.spiraken.com, or subscribe below to hear more. But Mikako's story is one which is addictive. Surprisingly, Greta is really addicted to this story. So our honorable mention for 95 is going to be a biography called A Drifting Life. This is the story of Yoshihiro Tatsumi, which is him dealing about getting into the manga industry and some of the stressors that he's had in life. This one is real, and it is well done. It's an Eisner Award-winning book. So let's keep on trucking and move on to 1996. 1996, the year I entered high school, and more importantly, a year when one of the most popular anime and manga came out. We're talking about Rumiko Takahashi's Inuyasha, the story of the half-demon and the girl from the future trying to find a cursed jewel to save the world. If you have not heard about the series, well done. This is a kid's manga, but it's great and well done. So let's move on to the manga recommendation for grown-up for this year. We're talking about Gambling Apocalypse Kaiji. The Zawa-Zawa-ness of this is great. This is the story of Kaiji. He is a guy who not really lucky, and a couple years back, he decided to co-sign a loan his friend gave him. The Yakuza are the people who have the loan, and they tell him his friend skipped town, and he now owes a large amount of money. They give him a couple options. First off, he could pay them until the day he dies, he could work for them forever, or he could take a chance on something kind of cool. If he gets on this cruise boat, the Esperanza, which has a bunch of games on it, and he wins the games, he can win the money that he owes and get some extra scratch as well. What does he do? He does this, he gets tricked into this, and he has to deal with an insane amount of torture and risk as he goes through these crazy games. This was the predecessor to Squid Games. These games are insane, and I will tell you this, you will never look at rock, paper, scissors the same again. This is a addictive series, a fun series, and a dark series. Because you want Kaiji to do good, but Kaiji is a piece of shit. Let's be honest. He's not the best person. Well worth checking out. Well worth getting into. So, from this gambling apocalypse and gambling manga, let's go to something a little more real. And this one is of a very tough subject. We are talking about the Mayoko Ano manga in close called Fat. This is a manga which wasn't released in a manga magazine. It was actually released in a women's magazine. And this is the story of Noko. Noko is a woman who is a little healthy. She's a little bigger than most, and she is bullied by her coworkers and several other people. And it's her dealing with a very serious topic. Because people are making fun of her, saying she's large and that she's too fat, and they say horrible things about her, she eventually finds a way to lose weight quickly and very unhealthy. This covers the topic of bulimia and anorexia, and it's done in a way which is very tragic. This is one of those mangas that you bring up because of the fact that this talks about this subject. It's a way to breach this topic, because this topic is one of those ones you do have to talk about. You can't just be like, oh, this is not important. This is one of those topics you need to know. It's not healthy. And this one goes through the entire ring of where she starts to where she finishes and everything going on. It is an unfair story, but it's one that has to be told. I could talk more, but I'm not going to on this one. If you want to read this, it is available. Honorable mentions for the year were Gravitation, the story of Bad Luck, an awesome rock band, and the story of lead singer Shuichi and his love of writer Yuki. And, well, it is a BL manga, which is pretty addictive. The other manga, which is more important, was Old Boy. Yes, the movie that had two adaptations, one Korean, one by Hollywood, is actually based on a manga. The manga has a very different ending. It is crazy. We do get a hallway fight scene, so worth checking out. Let's move on to 1997, the year when Cowboy Bebop came out. But that is not the most influential manga of 97. The most influential manga of 1997 is a story of a young boy who's got a dream. And what is that dream? To become king of the pirates. Yes, we're talking about One Piece. This is the year One Piece came out. If you've not read this manga, it is exceptional, wonderful, and amazing. It is still coming out to this day. The live action adaptation actually wasn't that bad. Enough said. So let's get to some actual manga recommendations for grown-ups, starting off with one of my favorite manga of all time. We're talking about Great Teacher Onizuka by Toru Fujiwara. This is the story of Akichi Onizuka, 22 years old, former biker boy, and someone who wants to become a teacher so he can get laid. Yes, that's literally why he wants to do this. And after he does this, he actually becomes a great teacher, because he's not someone who's book smart, but he takes people through the school of hard knocks to teach them lessons. Everything from breaking a wall between estranged husband and wife, to getting his hand stuck to bowling balls and saying he's Doraemon and saving a couple of students who are doing some bad things. He is a teacher that, to save a student's life, would jump off of a building to catch him and land on top of a Toyota Cresta. Or, after some money was stolen by a various person, raising the money to get all the students to go not to a cheap vacation, but rather going to Okinawa, or taking a gunshot from a psychotic teacher for a student. He is a teacher who exemplifies what being a teacher is. It's not the not not the it's the students which matter. It's not the numbers. And he's someone who at one point even tells a teacher who's saying, "Oh, I was a teacher for 400 students." He says, "Listen, for you they were just a number, but for them you were their only teacher." And this is a great series. It is well done. It has not aged well with some of the humor because he is a pervert. There's a lot of sex jokes in it, but it is a series that is great, and Onizuka is that great teacher. So from here, let's go to something a little bit darker, a little bit more disturbing, and we're talking about MPD Psycho by Sho Tajima and Eiji Otsuka. And this is a disturbing ass series, which is really well done. This is the story of, well, let's get to it. It's a story of Kobayashi. Kobayashi is a detective who is trying to figure out who this serial killer is until one day he gets a package. And what's inside the package? Well, it's his girlfriend missing her arms and legs and having been, well, she was used, we're going to say. And he ends up trying to find the killer, finds the killer, and then he decides, I am going to take care of this, because how could you do that? You're a horrible person. And as he's about to take care of this killer, he stops, takes off his glasses, and says, "You know what, Kobayashi? I'm in charge now. This is Shinji Nizono, one of the many personalities in this multiple personality detective. And due to him killing this criminal, he now gets fired from the police department and becomes a detective solving mysteries. And these mysteries are not for the faint of heart. We're not talking about he's solving who stole this or who murdered this person. It's more like, hey, there's a lady at this job who's eating quote unquote lamb at her restaurant. It turns out it's not lamb, it's people. Or a serial killer who kills people and then plants, well, flowers in their skulls. Why? Because he's crazy. And all the different personalities in him add different quantitative roles to this story. It is the sum of the whole parts. One of them is better at investigation. One of them is better at being kind of a snitch. We have, of course, our main alter, which is Amamiya, who's taken over, who's very quiet, very demure. But then we have Nishijono, who will shoot someone in the face just because they looked at him the wrong way. So, great story of dissociative identity disorder. Well done. Very conspiracy heavy, and it gets really weird by 7. I'm not going to lie, it gets very strange. But let's get to the honorable mentions. In the honorable mentions, there are 2. First off, we have a series which was released by Raijin Comics and Viz. We're talking about Eagle, the making of an Asian American president. And, of course, Koda Hirano's Hellsing, the story of Alucard, aka Vlad the Impaler, as he works for the Hellsing organization in England. Really cool. Really well done. So now let's move on to 1998. And 98 this year is weird because we've got one which, well, one of the most influential mangas of 1998 started increasing the amount of harem manga we got. And we're not talking about Tenchi Muyo, no. We're talking about Love Hina, the story of Keiichi Urameshi, a 2-time failure in getting into Tokyo University who wants to get there to meet the girl of his dreams. The only problem is he can't remember who she is, and more importantly than that, he's now in charge of an all-girls dormitory. What's going to happen? Who's he going to fall in love with? You have to wait and see. I still say best girl is going to be Motoko, Shinobu, or, well, Mutsumi, but everyone but Naru, because Naru is a horrible person, but everyone loves Naru. So let's actually get now into a more serious story, a more realistic story. We're talking about Vagabond. Now, this manga recommendation was written by Takahito Inoue and is getting a new adaptation, a new hardcover version. And this is the story of Shinmen Takezo, who one day would become Miyamoto Musashi. It's a story of how he survived the Battle of Sekigahara, and he's like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I am leaving. And he becomes a Ronin who just travels through Japan and survives. This story is beautiful. It is dark. It is horrifying. The art is very classic. If you liked Seven Samurai, you will love this. This is a true samurai story, which gets very dark very fast, and some beautiful artwork in this. A lot of these are picturesque and ones that you would frame on a wall. It is worth checking out. But that's all I can really say about this. Just you have to read this. 3-in-1 is available right now, but wait for the hardcover, I think. So our next recommendation is one which is finally getting an anime adaptation this September. We're talking about Uzumaki. Yes, the story of spirals by Junji Ito. This is a really disturbing and fun and weird story about a very simple town called Kurozu-cho, which is infected by spirals. This is cosmic horror at its best. If you love Lovecraft, you will love this. It's about how spirals have infected this town, driving people crazy, making people obsessed with spirals, having things like weird spiral creatures coming out. And I'm not going to spoil any more, but the anime looks amazing, the new adaptation. But this is a very disturbing story. There is also a live action adaptation that does a really good job showing how screwed up this is. But I digress. So now let us get on to the next year, because there is no honorable mentions for 98, to be honest with you, because we go right to 99. 1999, the year before the millennium, we had one of the best mangas out there by Naoki Urasawa as the influential manga of the year. We're talking about 20th Century Boys. Yes, the story of a group of friends who, as they grow up, something that they made up as a game as kids becomes real. The nemesis that they dreamed up as just a figment of their imagination has started a cult, and they have to solve what is going on. Our main character, Kenji, is trying to figure out what happened to their book of prophecy, a book that they just kind of drew together, and who is the mysterious figure known as Friend. This is a story of nostalgia, growing up, and the possibilities of friendship and conspiracy. Worth checking out, worth loving. Enough said. 20th Century Boys and the sequel 21st Century Boys is one of those ones that you definitely want to keep. So now let's get into the actual recommendations for the year. We're starting off with one of my favorites. We're talking about Mushishi. This is by Yuki Urashibara. This is an anthology series focusing on Ginkgo. And Ginkgo is a mushi master. It's his job to study occurrences that happen involving mushi. And mushi are these creatures that they're not plants, they're not animals, they're not spirits. There's something kind of in the middle in the realm of reality. You hear weird noise in the woods, might be a mushi. You suddenly lose hearing, might be a mushi. Ginkgo is not the main character in this. He is just an observer who solves these mysteries. Everything from someone who, whenever he draws a picture, the picture comes to life, and that's a mushi. Someone who has completely lost their hearing. Or someone who a book gets absorbed by their skin. Or someone whose eyes go blind because of a mushi. All unique stories that focus on life. And the artwork is beautiful and haunting, and this is very slow paced. But it's one of those stories you take your time reading and you'll want to read more. One of my favorite stories is the one where it's the guy looking for the reverse rainbow. Why is he looking for it? To find something that his dad saw years ago. And every single one of the single splash pages they have are these images that you'd want to have on your wall. Just like with Vagabond, it's this very dreamlike and watercolor-esque imagery. Definitely worth recommending to anyone who likes manga and is a grown-up. And speaking of manga as a grown-up, let's get to some dad fiction, shall we? This is stuff for people who are over the age of 40 who like just reading a more serious story. We're talking about Planates. This is written by Makoto Yukimura, and this is one of the best sci-fi Shuin Award winners. And this is very simple. It's a story of a group of space garbage men. Yes, because in space, we filled it up with tons of satellite and other crap. And if you've seen the movie Gravity, you'll know a single screw could destroy an entire space station. So it's these guys' jobs to clear up the junk in space, one nut at a time. Compelling, well written, and more importantly, that's something which is a real sci-fi story that you could see plausibly happening. The visuals on this are stunning and make you want to go into space. There's some other ones we're going to talk about later about space travel as well, but this one is a very memorable story. And so let's get to the last honorable mentions of the 20th century. And we're talking about Paradise Kiss, which is the sequel to Neighborhood Story, the story of the Paradise Kiss clothing company. And our other one is Mouse, one which you can get the anime for, but the manga is a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. You may have to go to Open Waters. But it's a story of a super thief known as Mouse and his 3 amorous assistants who get involved in some things. If you like Golden Boy, you'd love this one. So let's move on to the 21st century with the year 2000. Yes, Y2K didn't happen and more manga has come out. Also, more manga is being released in the West, and we're getting some more diverse and dark stories during this period of time. The big thing that happened this year was, like I said, Y2K didn't happen. It is the millennium. I graduated this year, and craziness occurred. And the big influential manga of 2000 was a series known as Gantz by Hiroya Oku. This is the story of a couple of friends who are forced by a creepy ball to hunt down aliens in a very violent and horrifying way. I would love to show a lot of the images from this, but I'm saving that for a horror panel. And if you've not read Gantz yet, this series is dark and twisted as fuck. And I am going to curse with this. This is a very twisted series, so worth checking out. And let's actually get to our manga recommendations for this year, starting off with one of my favorites. We're talking about Nana, another one by Ai Aizawa, and this one is a little different because this is the story of Nana Ozaki and Nana Kumatsu, 2 women who moved to Tokyo at 20 years old, and they end up moving in the same apartment together, apartment number 707. It's them dealing with their life. We have Nana O, who's trying to pursue her musical career with the Blackstones, who are her band, and Nana K, who came there to be with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend screwed her over, so now she's just trying to find love in life. It's a story of rock music, it's a story of romance, it's a story of being better than who you want to be and finding a goal in life. And more importantly, a tale of friendship. Great story, great soundtrack, and more importantly, it is one of these ones where you will cry, you will be happy, and hopefully Ai Aizawa eventually will finish the story because it is on hiatus. And this has to have an ending. Where it's at right now is such a dramatic point. Someone is dead, and another person may or may not be the father of a baby. Gonna have to wait and see. Our next manga recommendation is an autobiography that is never going to be finished because the author has died. But it is one which is definitely a unique story. And we're talking about With the Light, Raising an Autistic Child. And this one, ironically, is you can get in most bookstores, not in the manga section, but it's actually in parenting, because this is a real story. And this is written by Keiko Tobe, and it's her story of her son, Hikari, and everything going on, because she gave birth to Hikari in the late 80s when autism was not a thing, and it's her trying to discover how to live. I mean, when it starts off, she gives birth to Hikaru, life's gonna be good, and he's her first kid, and everything's gonna be great. And unfortunately, as she's trying to interact with her child, she discovers that he's autistic. Through small little tics, little moments of him stimming, the fact that he doesn't like being held, he doesn't like breastfeeding. The doctors, when they first say he's autistic, she's like, no, there's no way he's autistic, he's normal. But all she wants is a son that she cares about. It's also dealing with the fact that her mother-in-law doesn't understand autism and is a horrible person. Her husband doesn't get the situation. And it's them learning about autism and raising this child and him getting better over time. Starts off as a nonverbal child to eventually a child who can speak, even though he speaks very repetitiously. It's a real story which, if you know anybody with autism or you don't know about autism, it is one that you should read. Anyway, let's get into some honorable mentions for 2000, and we'll start off with 2 that are very dark. One is Dorohedoro, which is the story of a world of wizards and a lizard-faced warrior who wants to find the lizard that turned him, the wizard who turned him into a lizard. And the other one we have is Gokusen. Gokusen is the story of a Yakuza princess who wants to be a math teacher in an all-boys school where they treat women bad. She has to wear a sweatsuit to go to work, but she kicks ass because she is a Yakuza princess that no one knows a Yakuza princess, so she doesn't take shit from anybody. Let's move on to 2000. And now we're in 2001. And in 2001, one of the big three was released. We're talking about Bleach, the story of Ichigo, who becomes one of the best Shinigami ever. The new adaptation of the Thousand Year War is currently airing, and this is a crazy story. Very violent and worth going into. But let's actually get into something a little bit happier, shall we? Because we've been kind of talking about a lot of depressing things. So let's talk about Twin Spica by Ko Yoganuma. This is one of my favorite mangas to get a hold of. This was one of my white whales for a while. I have the entire series. And this is a slice of life realistic story about a young girl who wants to become an astronaut. Well, originally it's a spaceship driver. And it's her studying to become an astronaut while being assisted by a strange, mysterious ghost who has the head of a lion and plays a harmonica. And this is following this young girl grow into a woman to become an astronaut, and all the trials and tribulations, things going on with her father's reputation because he designed a spaceship that blew up like the Challenger. So was it his fault? Should she be allowed to do things if she screwed up? Or some of her classmates, one of them who can't see because he's colorblind, another one who's trying their best and they can't make it because they have a heart condition. This is a story of reaching for your dreams and going for it, even though she is kind of small. And you root for her the entire time to do the best she can. So let's move forward into something a little more grounded. How about some music with Nodame Cantabile? This is the story of a young man who wants to become a pianist. He wants to become a pianist till he gets to school, which is his university, has a great music program, and he decides he wants to be a conductor. He wants to be great at this. And things are going okay until one day he hears a beautiful melody and runs into Nodame, a crazy girl who plays by ear. She has no school learning. She is gluttonous. She is slothful. She is lazy. And she is a complete and utter mess, but she plays the piano beautifully. And it's the relationship that these two polar opposites gain in this school and all of the elements of learning about being in an orchestra. This is weird, great, silly, and just God. I mean, at one point, it's literally just Nona being crazy, saying her catchphrase of "Gabble" as she does something dumb, or writing a song about farts. This is a story that will make you smile. That's what it's for. So our honorable mentions for this year, we've got Gyo by Junji Ito, the story of a bunch of mechanical creatures coming out of the sea to kill everybody in the death stench. And then one of the other major manga series, Full Metal Alchemist, the story of Al and Ed, two brothers who, because they messed with the laws of alchemy, now have lost body parts and have to try to get their bodies back. A story which is great, and more importantly, let's just say it, it's addictive. And you will never look at dogs again after this series. You all know what I'm talking about. So let's move on to 2022. 2022, this one had one of the most influential geeky manga in the United States because this one was about a college club, specifically the Society for the Study of Modern Visual Culture, Genshiken. This is about a group of misfits who aren't geeky enough to be in the anime club, aren't crazy enough to be in the manga club, so they make their own club, which is a mixture of everything possible. We have one person who's obsessed with video games, one person who's obsessed with doujinshi, one person who's a cosplayer, one who likes sewing, and all of them working together. If you've ever been in an anime club in college, this is the one for you. It's one of my favorite nerdy mangas to go with that focus on being an otaku, and it is great. And speaking of college experiences, let's talk about a different college club. We're talking about The Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service. This is a horror story written by Eiji Otsuka, and this is the story of the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service, a group of college students from a Buddhist college who graduate and decide to create a little company which their job is they talk to ghosts and fulfill their last wish in order to get weird things. Everything from lotto tickets that are worth money to abandoned houses and cars. Our main character is the bald guy. He is someone who can actually talk to spirits and control them. We have the guy with the glasses. He is a dowser. He can douse and find dead bodies. We have the girl with pigtails. She is an embalmer. We have the girl with glasses. She is a hacker and also the unofficial head of the business. And then last and certainly not least, we have the guy with the puppet. And he is a channeler who could channel dead spirits. And also, for some reason, he says that he is channeling a space alien in his right hand. Is this real or is he crazy? Well, you gotta wait and see what happens. But this is the story of them as they deal with various elements in horror stories. Very anthological. And they do not play in this. There are some horrifying things in this. Zombies who are brought back to life to get revenge on someone. Or, dare I say, a dead body that has been reanimated into a robot which is powered by video games. You ever think you'd heard that before? No. But violence aplenty. And speaking of violence aplenty, let's go to the city of Rawanapur. Yes, we're talking about Black Lagoon. The story of Black Lagoon Company, a group of mercenaries who are trying to make money in this lawless city. And headed by Dutch, the captain of the ship, a older gentleman. We have Benny, who is their computer hacker and their money man. We have Revi, their loose cannon, most popular girl possible. And then we have Rokaru, or Rock as he's now called, a former salaryman who is our main character and the guy who's trying to make sure this company doesn't go too far. And this is a action-packed story which is violent and depraved and crazy. There's everything from unaliving Nazis to just some great moments in this. Just violent and awesome. And if you like the Helsing gunplay, you will love the gunplay in this as well. Our honorable mention is by Kaori Mori, Emma, the story of a maid who falls in love with the Lord and the romance that they have. Very cute, very whimsical. So let's move forward to 2003. And in 2003, this crazy year, our most influential manga is another story about otaku, but this is different because this is about hikikomori. And friend of the podcast, John Paul, originally known as Fight Pate, he loves this manga. He has the novel version and the book version. This is the story of a young man who's a hikikomori who ends up thinking that the NHK is trying to brainwash people. Crazy story. If you can get a hold of it, it is one of those ones that you will not want to put down. But let's actually get to some of the manga recs for this month. And the first manga rec we have is Me and the Devil Blues by Akira Hiramoto. This is the somewhat true story of what happened to Robert Johnson on that fateful day in the crossroads and what happened afterwards. And for those of you who don't know who Robert Johnson is, Robert Johnson was an individual who ended up supposedly being one of the best musicians of all time, sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads in order to become an amazing musician. And this is the story of what happened and how this deal kind of warped him and changed him into horrifying ways. Also, he becomes friends with Clyde from Bonnie and Clyde. This is a period piece. A lot of certain words which are inappropriate are used, and this is set during a time when Jim Crow laws existed. So, yeah. One of those ones that Viz surprisingly released, and it is crazy. So let's go back to Naoki Urasawa, shall I? With something a little more modern and more sci-fi. We're talking about Pluto. This was Naoki Urasawa's attempt to revive an old Astro Boy story. Yes, the story of the world's strongest robot being adapted from a Astro Boy story into a noir murder mystery where a bunch of humans and robots are being killed by a mysterious figure, and it is up to robot investigator Gashik as he tries to solve this mystery. Meanwhile, we have a lot of the other robots involved, including Astro, North Number 7, Atlas, Hercules, and so many others. And this is a love letter to Astro Boy. And the recent adaptation on Netflix was a faithful adaptation to this, but this story is one of those ones that you do show someone who does not like manga to be like, here's what manga is. This is one of those ones where you show it. And Pluto is a horrifying being, but we hope the best of what happens. Our honorable mentions are going to be Homunculus, the story of a man who, for 100,000 yen, allows someone to drill a hole in his skull through trepanation, and he starts seeing crazy shit. This one is very surreal and unusual. And then we have Basilisk, the Koga Ninja Scrolls, which is the story of a group of ninjas who are trying to get married and a bunch of ninjas who want to kill them. This is that story. Violence aplenty. So now we're on to 2004. 2004, I graduated from one of my colleges and life started. And more importantly, this is a crazy year because a lot of events occurred. But the influential manga of 2024 was a series known as Oku by Fumi Yoshinaga. Oku the Inner Chamber is the story of the Oku. In an alternate past where a virus kills 80% of the male population, women have taken control of Japan. And we have a female shogun who has her harem, the Oku. And this is the story of how this virus affected everything and how this world is shown where women are in charge because they have now taken over because there aren't enough men to do everything, so they have to become the business owners, the people who work on the farms. Meanwhile, men, their job is to propagate because they have the seed. This is a unique look at history that is beautifully drawn. If you've ever looked at Fumi Yamashima's artwork, it is beautifully drawn. And speaking of artwork, let's go to something which is more compelling and something which actually has affected the world itself. We're talking about The Drops of God. The Drops of God is a story about wine, drinking, and in getting an inheritance. This has been adapted several times, including a new version which was released in Apple TV and was a co-production between America, France, and Japan. This manga is extremely popular in France and actually has affected sales of wine. And it's the story of a young man whose father was a major wine critic, and he despised his dad because his dad forced him to taste a bunch of stuff, learn how to pour wine. And he said, you know what, Dad, I don't want to get into wine. I'm going to become a guy who sells beer. My problem is his dad dies. And he says, listen, son, if you want to get my inheritance, which is worth several $1 billion, you have to go in a competition against my number one student to discover the 12 drops of God, 12 specific wines. And this manga depicts wines in a unique way, where just by tasting wines, they bring you to different places. For example, a field of roses or a Queen concert. This teaches you about various types of wine, everything from French wine, Italian wine, Japanese wine, American wine, and this is for wine aficionados. If you don't know anything about wine, this will make you sound like you know your shit. And it's a compelling story of a son trying to learn about his father and someone who is trying to win his fortune. Very mature and very engaging. So from here, let's go to something a little more cute, a little happier, because we haven't talked about anything really cute. So let's talk about Chi's Sweet Home. Yes, the story of Chi the Cat by Konata Konami. This is a manga which is simply a simple story about Chi. Chi is a kitten who one day, when she was following her mom, she saw a butterfly, got lost, and ended up getting separated from her family and had to find something new. Chi gets adopted by Yohei and his mom and dad, and Chi becomes a part of the family. This is a very simple story of a little kitten and her antics in the house. This is, if you have a cat, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you don't have a cat, you'll want a cat after this. This is just the adventures of a cat. And this is a way to turn your brain off and just relax at the antics that are occurring. Everything from her discovering the evil toilet bowl to her living in a rent-free apartment, or better yet, her figuring out that she's not a human like she thinks she is, that she's actually a cat. This is an adorable series that has 2 anime adaptations. One of them is CG and one of them is traditional animation. The manga is in color and the manga is left to right, and it is sold in an omnibus form. Pick it up. You will thank me later. And let's get to some honorable mentions. First off, we have the sequel to both MPD Psycho and Kurosaki Corpse Delivery Service Mail, which is a story of a medium who has to deal with various cases after he gets messages through the mail. And Bartender, the story of a bartender who is amazing and is able to figure out what you need just by hearing your story or looking at you. If Drops of God is how you learn about wine, Bartender is how you learn about cocktails. The attention to detail in this story is phenomenal. There is a live action adaptation, 2 anime adaptations, including one that just dropped and is currently available on Crunchyroll. And again, if you want to sound like you know things about wine, this is the one to check out. So let's move forward to 2005. 2005. The cool thing is that the next influential manga is one which was a cultural phenomenon. This actually happened because in 2005, on a 2chan website, a young individual wrote a story about how he was on a train one day and a drunk was bothering a pretty girl, and he rose up to the occasion. And we're talking about Trainman Densha Otako. This is a crazy, romantic, and heartfelt story of a nerd who ends up saving a girl on a train. And as he saves her on the train, he ends up talking to a bunch of people on the 4chan channel as they tell him what to do, because eventually the girl wants to thank him, sends him something special, and he doesn't know what to do. So these people who are reading this story end up helping him. This 4chan group talks to him, and the 2chan group ends up helping him discover what he needs to do and move forward to be that best person he could be, helping him figure out what she means when she sends him an Hermes cup, or what to say when he wants to ask her out, or how to dress good. It's all these people living vicariously through Densha's life and motivating for him to end up with this girl who they've deemed Hermes. And this has been adapted so many times. There's actually the original novel, which is just the script from the 2chan channel. There's the shoujo adaptation. There's the kid adaptation. This was a huge, large phenomenon. There's even a live-action film, which at the end of it, they recreate the infamous scene to have the main characters for the TV series show up, which the TV series is a little more cringy. You will never look at Earth, Wind, and Fire the same way again after that one. So with that in mind, let's actually get to some other recommendations from this year. And first off, we're starting off with one which is truly rocking and truly phenomenal. We're talking about, for those metalheads, you know what I'm talking about. Go to DMC! Yes, Detroit Metal City. Written by Kawanori Watasuki, and this is an insane, hysterical story of a young man named Soichi. And he is a young musician who's come to Tokyo to become a Swedish pop sensation. Unfortunately, that's not going to pay the bills. This is also the story of Johann Krauser II, the lead singer of the death metal band Detroit Metal City, who was a terrorist demon from hell who supposedly violated his parents, unalived them, eats souls, and does horrible things, really violent. The twist in this is, though, is that Johann is Soichi. And it's just the joke of him not living up to the expectations and him trying to balance the mystery of being Johann Krauser and him being a really nice person. Like people saying, you killed your parents. Like, I've never done anything wrong in my life. Or when his psychotic fans misinterpret things he does to think bad things. For example, him tripping and falling and hitting a cop in the face becomes he's beating up cops and going to violate them. Or his antics with his co-bandmates, including one who's obsessed with paying for friends. We have a pervert drummer. We have the band manager who tells how awesome a song is by how moistured her waterfall is, and just a lot of other craziness. This is a gag series that's the same joke over and over again, but it is one which will have you laughing in stitches, one way or the other. So from here, let's go to a different music group. We'll talk to one by Inao Asano. We're talking about Solanin. And Solanin is a music story that's a slice of life, but it's also a examination of a relationship. Because this is a story of Mako and Taneda, who graduated from university 2 years ago, and they don't have any real goals. One is an office lady, the other one's an illustrator at a press company. They're just making enough to just kind of survive, but they're just dealing with life until one day one of them meets a band member, and they end up starting a band again. And this is the story of growing up by someone who has done some great things with this. This is a story that is sad, that does not shy away from life. Nothing wraps up in a neat little package in this story. And I'm not going to say anymore because this is a journey you have to take on your own. And speaking of journeys to take on your own, honorable mentions are going to be Hideo Azuma's Disappearance Diary, the true story of how Hideo Azuma, the man who created Loli, and you should blame him for that, one day getting depressed and sad and abandoning his family and everything he owns to become a bum. And then he does it again for 2 years. It's kind of crazy. The other one is Liar Game, the story of a super honest girl who gets involved in a game of deception and lies, and her needing to hire a con artist to help her survive this insane game, lest she owes millions of dollars. Both are great. And let's move on to 2006. 2006, this year is a year which a new anime appeared that was based on something created by the creator of Rave Master. The influential manga is going to be Fairy Tail, the story of Natsu and the rest of the Fairy Tail Guild as they try to be the best sorcerers they can be. Great story. And from here, let's move on to House of Five Leaves. This is written by Natsumi Ono. This is the story of a Ronin who has dismissed by his lord and now ends up working for a bunch of criminals in the House of Five Leaves as their Yojimbo. This is the story of 5 individuals as they deal with tons of scenarios, heists, and their lives. One part slice of life, one part crime drama. So I'm going to say, because I do not want to spoil this one at all, but if you like Ocean's 11, if you like period pieces, this is for you. The art style is a little hard to get into, but it is worth checking out. And from here, from criminals, let's go to something a little more, not lighthearted, but more honest, more pure, more godly, you could say. The story of 2 individuals who become roommates. We're talking about Saint Young Men. This is a very simple one. It sounds like a joke. Jesus and Buddha decide to become roommates. They come to modern Japan and it's them as roommates. That's it. It's them living together and all the antics behind them. For example, the fact that most people think that Jesus looks like Johnny Depp. Or whenever Buddha's on the train, people think his ears are straps. Or the fact that whenever Jesus is upset, he makes bread. Like bread magically appears. Or when Buddha's happy, he shines because he's omnipotent. A great ridiculous story. I mean, one of my favorite elements is they go to a amusement park, not named Disney, and it's them trying to figure out if they're considered seniors or not because they've been around for hundreds of years, but are they seniors? Are they not? And some other ridiculous elements. Definitely just check it out. So our honorable mentions, we have Ristorante Paradiso, the story of a young girl who likes a very rich old man and is working at a restaurant. And the other one is Common Teacher, the story of a teacher who, when people are bad in his class, he disappears and suddenly a masked figure in a Kamen Rider helmet beats the shit out of them up. Are they the same person? Well, you have to wait and see what's going on with that. But from here, let us move on to 2007. 2007, the influential manga is another one by Inao Asano. We're talking about Goodnight Poon Poon. I am not going to spoil this one, just if I say it is the story of Poon Poon, who is drawn as a bird creature, and the depressing life that Poon Poon has. This will make you cry. Enough said. And so for our honorable, that was our honor. So let's get on to our recommendations for the year of 2007. The first one is definitely dad fiction. This is for dads. And we're talking about Space Brothers. This is the story of 2 brothers who want to be, after an event in their childhood, they decide they want to become astronauts. The only problem is that one makes it and the other one doesn't, and has to go through alternate ways to become an astronaut, going through hoops and whistles, while the other one made it in an instant. The younger brother, who is the blonde, becomes the great astronaut, and the older brother has to try to get there. Does he make it? Do they make it that far? You're going to have to read to find out. And speaking of space, let's go to something which is a little bit less spacey and a little more crazy. This is another biography, but this is also a cat manga. We're talking about Junji Ito's Cat Diary. Yes, this is the true story of Junji Ito's cats, Yon and Moon, and his interactions with them in a way that only Junji Ito can draw. He has turned the story of his two cats into almost a horror story, because one of his cats, Yon, has a skull on his back, and the other one is just a crazy kitty. And this is him trying to deal with these two insane cats, and also him trying to be a cat daddy. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, it's real, and at the end of the manga, you actually have images and photos of all of the actual cats. So you actually see the real Yon, the real Moo. You see that he actually has a skull on his back, and it also talks about the fact that Moon passed away. Surprisingly, really heartfelt for Junji Ito, and he does make it creepy, but it works. So our honorable mentions for 2007 is going to be Spice and Wolf, the story of Lawrence and Hollow the Wise Wolf, as they try to tackle mercantilism and bureaucracy in alternate time. And What Did You Eat Yesterday? The Fumi Yoshinaga story of a couple of gentlemen who are in a relationship, and what did they eat the day before? This is one of the better stories out there for food manga and for relationship stories. And it is a great adaptation. Definitely worth checking out. Anyway, next. Let's go to 2008. 2008 is an important year for me personally. Why is it an important year? Because this is the year that Spiraken Manga Review started. Originally, we were the society providing informative reviews about connecting ants and narratives, but then we changed into some podcast reviews. But this is the year we started in May 15th of 2008. And besides us talking about various manga, this was the year that one of the greatest cycling mangas came out. We're talking about Yamushi Pedal by Wataru Watanabe. Hime, Suzuki de. Yes, the story of a young man who ends up becoming a climber in a cycling team. If you've never ridden a bike before, you will want to after this. But from here, let's go to some more mature content for 2008. And the one that we're talking about is Moteki. Moteki is by Mutsuru Kuba. And this is a story of a man's moteki, which is the period in life when things are working out for him. Because one day, a girl calls him that he had a crush on. And then about an hour later, another girl that he had a crush on calls him. And it's him kind of realizing, wait, I've become attractive. What's going on? It's him trying to figure out what he's going to do, who he's going to love, and what's going on, while four women are trying to get with him. We have one who is his ex-girlfriend, one who is the girl that he had a crush on in school. There's one who is the friend of his who everyone says that they're the couple that are going to be together. And then there's the girl that just kind of shows up. And it's him trying to decide what to do, and more importantly, make a choice and move forward in life, because everything does change because of what's going on. It's this period of time when things are working out, but also choices you make, you have to make the right choice, and that's what this is about. Pretty simple, but also kind of crazy. On the other spectrum, we also have the year that Princess Jellyfish came out. Princess Jellyfish, for those of you who are unaware, is a great story of a young Fujoshi who is obsessed with jellyfish, and she lives in an all-girls dorm, and she's not doing great in life. Things aren't going too well. Her only friend is Clara, her jellyfish friend, until one day she's rescued by this really beautiful woman she's never seen before, and she's kind of shocked at this. Only problem is that this beautiful woman is actually a man. He is a cross-dresser, and he identifies as a man who just likes wearing women's clothes. And it's him opening up this young girl's life and helping her to be more feminine. Princess Jellyfish is a great story. Greta has a lot to say about it, and I'm actually about doing a Greta discusses Princess Jellyfish episode. But we'll talk about that later. So from here, our honorable mentions, we have two. We have Naoki Urasawa's Billy Bats, a story of a comic artist who may have plagiarized someone from the past. It's this very odd situation. Unfortunately, due to some licensing errors, Billy Bats right now is unable to be released in the United States, but it's one which, if you have a chance, check it out. And the other manga is Stargazing Dog. This is the story of a very faithful puppy who lives with his daddy, and when his daddy gets kicked out of the house by his wife, the dog goes with daddy, and it's them living or trying to survive. Even when daddy gets really sick and passes, this dog is loyal. This is a sad story of a dog, but also an uplifting story because of all the people who are affected by this dog. I don't want to go any more into it because it is a sad story, but it is one which is kind of uplifting. But anyway, let's move forward to 2009. And in 2009, the most influential manga is a story of one man. We're talking about Saitama and One Punch Man, a manga with the same joke over and over again. Bad guy shows up, Saitama punches him in the chest and kills him. But he's not the main character, even though he is the main character. You read One Punch Man for all the side characters, like Sonic, like Tornado, and more importantly, Moomin Rider, the greatest of all heroes. But this is for 2009, the influential manga, so let's get to some more of the other manga I want to talk about, specifically one which is, compared to another series, we're talking about Knights of Sidonia. This is written by Tsutomu Nihei, and this is in the same world as Nihei's other mangas, Biomega and Blame. I didn't want to talk about those because those I focus on in our horror panel. But this is Attack on Titan in space. The Sidonia is a seed ship going to another planet. They have no way of going home. And the problem is that the seed ship is being pursued and attacked by these alien creatures known as the Guana. The only thing that could stop the Guana are these specific spears that they developed on the Sidonia. The problem is there's only 46 of them. Once those spears are gone, they're screwed. And so this is essentially, they're just being hunted relentlessly as they're trying to go through space, trying to find a new home. This series is dark. It is twisted. Characters that you fall in love with will die horribly in this. Like I said, Knights of Sidonia in space. Our main character is someone who is hidden in the ship, raised as a child, and he is very different from the rest, who there's been some genetic modification. They can photosynthesize, he can't. And also, like with most Nihei series, there's an anthropomorphic talking bear. Why is the bear talking? You have to wait and see. And Nagata is a great main character, and the mystery behind what he is keeps you going in this series. So from the far-flung future, let's go to the past to a more realistic story. We're talking about Wolf's Moon. This series was created by the assistant to Kentaro Moro, the creator of Berserk. And this is a retelling of William Tell, focusing on the Wolf's Maw, a border gate between Austria and Switzerland, and the administrator who's in charge of it, who is a horrible man who does horrible things. A good example is someone who didn't have the right paperwork getting his head cut off, or a guy who was with his son and they brought the wrong amount of information or paperwork. The father is hung and the child is told, you have to hold up your dad all night. If you do that, you both survive. But before you hold them up, I'm going to burn your feet. And then you're going to hold them up. It's menacing and sad in this Austrian story. And like I said, this is a story of revolution, of resistance, and of oppression in Europe. And you could see the elements of Berserk in this in the design of the mountains. That's all I'm going to say, but pick up Wolf's Moon, worth it. Our honorable mentions are going to be, of course, so I brought up it before, Attack on Titan, the story of humanity versus the Titans, and all the twists and turns of that. And then Sickness Unto Death, about a psychiatrist who's taking care of a young woman who has some mental problems. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil the story. So now we've passed, and now it is 20 years later. We're going into 2010. Yes, 2010. And this year was crazy. This was actually a very low year for manga. Not much came out this year. There's no real honorable mention. But we do have two mangas to talk about. The first one is going to be Hideout. This is by Masumi Kakizaki, and this is a horror story about a husband who plots to kill his wife. And after he tries to kill his wife, they end up in a bunch of abandoned tunnels with someone who survived the radiation blast, and horror ensues. A very dark story, one which, if you like thrillers, it is worth checking out. But let's go to something happier because this is really depressing and sad. Let's go to something just ridiculous and very high schooly. We're talking about My Neighbor Seki by Takuma Morishiga. This is pretty simple. It is a story of Yomi and her insane classmate Seki, who sits right next to her. Yomi tries to study in class, and Seki does insane things. Everything from creating a domino trick, Rube Goldberg's, trying on glasses, doing a car entrance exam, creating a movie. He does tons of things, and he's just annoying. But you love him for it. This is one of those ones where you just read to turn your brain off and enjoy, and it is My Neighbor Seki. Worth it. The sequel series is about them married and their kid being just as crazy as Seki is. Also, Seki never talks. That's another thing. So let's move on to 2011, shall we? In 2011, the influential manga is one which we all talk about, we all know, we all love. We're talking about the story of Kaneki. Yes, we're talking about Tokyo Ghoul by Sue Ishida. This is a crazy story about Kaneki, who in a world where ghouls exist ends up becoming a ghoul because he talks to a girl who likes books like him. And he ends up becoming, well, a monster who eats people. Want to hear more about it or see some cool images? Stay tuned for the horror panel video. And speaking of horror, let's go to something a little bit more disturbing, a little more sci-fi. We're talking about Terraformars, or Terraformers. This is in an alternate future. We've decided to terraform Mars, very simply. What are we going to do? We're going to send a bunch of algae to Mars and send a bunch of cockroaches, and they're going to create, because of the cockroaches eating the algae, to create an artificial atmosphere. Only one tiny problem with that. When we get to Mars, that's now breathable, the cockroaches have evolved to cavemen-like levels. And for those who don't know, cockroaches hate humans. They want to kill us all. So it is humans versus cockroaches. But in order to fight the cockroaches, we have developed some unique measures, including some genetic modification to have attributes of various animals and insects. So it's humanity versus cockroaches and some really cool powers. I will say the fact that you have one guy who has a pistol shrimp's punch is really cool. We have another person who is a bomber beetle. You have an octopus guy, and then of course we have someone who is a hornet, which apparently hornets have really cool blasting ability. So, yeah, sci-fi insanity and violence. And from sci-fi, let's go to a little bit more fantasy. And this one has a really long title. This is Gate, thus the Japanese Special Defense Force fought in their land. This is the story of a portal that opens up in Shinjuku. And a bunch of knights and dragon riders and orcs come through to kill us all. Only one problem. They're knights. And we have guns and tanks and helicopters. So after we fight this incursion, we decide to go into this magical realm to, get our piece of the pie. It's a reverse isekai that is led by a guy who just wants to get the latest download for his favorite video game. An otaku who's in his 30s, who because he did something brave during the first incursion, he's now in charge and he has to make first contact with all these people. That's what this is about. This is a reverse isekai that is one part harem, one part action, and one part what the hell's going on. Unfortunately, the actual manga by One Piece Books has been canceled for reasons, but you can find the light novel and the anime if you look for it. But this is a Very fun series with a great male adult protagonist. Our honorable mentions are going to be Gangsta, the story of a one-eyed, well, man of leisure and a deaf soldier of fortune as they try to problem solve in a crime-ridden city. If you liked Black Lagoon, this is a more dark and skizzy version of that because the Black Lagoon crew, they had some things they wouldn't cross. In Gangsta, they're horrible people. They're handymen who do a lot of things that are questionable. Some things are good, but a lot of things are really questionable. On the other hand, we have Ultimate Otaku Teacher, the story of a genius who wants to make an anywhere door from Doraemon. Why? Because he can. This one's silly and ridiculous. So now let's move on to 2012. 2012, the year that we thought the world was going to end, but it didn't end, and more importantly, a year when some crazy things occurred. And the crazy thing and this is another year where not much happened. There wasn't a lot of manga that were released. The big one that we're going to talk about is a manga called Inside Mari. And Inside Mari is the story of a young man who wakes up one day in the body of a girl that he saw at a convenience store, and he doesn't know what happened. He was someone who was a nerd who played video games, and then for some reason he is now in her body. What happened? He doesn't remember. What is going to occur? He doesn't know. But this is a unique gender swap story where we don't know where it goes. You have to read it to find out. And that's pretty much all that there was for 2012. 2012 was kind of a slow year. So let's move on to 2013. 2013, influential manga is going to be Ancient Mega's Bride, the story of a wizard who ends up rescuing a young girl with a lot of magical potential and the romance that blossoms between them, even though he does not look like a human. One part Beauty and the Beast, one part Harry Potter, and one part most dark romance fantasies. This one goes places I would not expect anyone to go, but it is one which you should read. So now for the other manga recommendations, the big one is going to be, the next one is actually realistic. We're talking about Complex Age by Yui Sakuma. And this is the story of a woman in her 30s who is a cosplayer. She's actually 5'8" and she likes cosplaying a little girl. That's her favorite cosplay. And that's what she loves cosplaying as. And she goes all in. Like any good cosplayer, she totally goes as close as you can to 2D, studies every episode, and any little change in the design she will mark into it. Like in the newest episode, her favorite character has an additional emblem and she adds it to her cosplay. And she's excited to do this. The only problem is she meets someone who is shorter, is the perfect size for this girl, who throws her out the window, who wants to be a cosplayer too. And it's being in a fandom when you're a little bit older and how you deal with it. That's what this manga is about. And it is a blessing, a curse, and more importantly, it is something which you really want to look at. And if you're a cosplayer, it gets the cosplay community down perfectly. I could say more, but read it, get to it like that. And from here, another realistic story. This one's a little different. It's not cosplay. This one instead is going to be about parenting. Talking about sweetness and lightning. And this is the story of Tsumugi and Daddy. And Tsumugi and Daddy, they're dealing with the fact that mom died a couple months ago. And they're trying to just survive. And it's them learning to survive and cook. And how are they going to cook? Well, they're taught by one of Daddy's students. This is a manga which actually has actual cooking applications, and you can actually make the real recipes at the end of every chapter. I've made a couple of these. Also, fun fact, read all the notes before you start cooking because there are certain things which are fixed at the bottom of the page. I did not know this. I made some mistakes. If you watch my cooking panel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's great seeing Tsumugi come into her own and the family grow and learn how to cook. This is a cooking manga that is heartwarming, endearing, and well done. I can say more, but suffice to say, you got to read it. It is great. Our honorable mentions are Ninja Slayer Kill. If you've watched the amazing story by Bradley Bond that was released on by Studio Trigger, you know what it's about. If you haven't, it is an insane story about a ninja that kills ninjas. The other manga is the Shiori Experience, which is the story of a young woman who just turned 27 who is being possessed by Jimi Hendrix and has to become a rock star before the end of her 21st or 27th year, or else she's going to join the 27 Club. This series will never be released in the US because there are so many likeness right issues. Kurt Cobain is referenced, Michael Jackson's referenced. A lot of the members of the 27 Club are referenced in this insane story, so, which is awesome. If you're a music fan, Shiori Experience is worth checking out. So from here, let us go to 2014. With 2014, we have a story in a manga which is popular now. That came out in 2014, 10 years ago. And the one we're talking about is Dungeon Meshi. Delicious in Dungeon, the story of Laios and his party as they try to rescue his little sister. Chilchuck, Marcel, and Senshi trying to get through the dungeon with no money while forcing themselves to survive by eating monsters. Everything from using ghosts to make sorbet to eating, well, a lot of other things which are really questionable but look really, really delicious. I mean, you have roast basilisk, you have simmering cabbage and spicy cabbage, jack-o'-lantern potage, and man-eating plant tart. This is a delicious and silly story that is addictive. I will say some people believe that Laos is on the spectrum. I'm not sure of that. I just think that he's just oblivious, but who knows. Series is one which is remarkable, and if you play D&D, all the references are great. Now from here, from fantasy, let's go back to some sci-fi with another story. This is one about, well, Inuyashiki. This is by Hiroya Oko, and this is a kind of sad story about Inuyashiki. He is a man in his 50s who his family doesn't respect him. We're pretty sure that his wife is cheating on him. His kids hate him. And the only person that loves him is his dog, Hanako, who he bought for his daughter, who he has to take care of. And it has been found out that Inuyashiki has terminal cancer. He hasn't told his family yet. He doesn't know what to do because no one cares. And one day he goes out with Hanako, walks to the park to take him out because he needs some time to think, and he gets hit with a meteorite and dies. Well, it's not really a meteorite. It's actually a spaceship, and the aliens in the spaceship are like, oh shit, we just ran over something. Crap. They're going to know we did something. Let's fix this somehow. And how they fix it? Well, they take Inuyashiki and they fix him by turning him into a super robot. And now he has all this strength, all this power, and he has to figure out what he's going to do, and he's going to try to save the day by saving people and just being more interesting. Only problem is that at the crash site, someone else got hit. And unlike Inuyashiki, who's a good man who's just old, this is a kid who's an incel who hates the world and wants to see the world burn. And because of that, it is old man with good heart versus insane video game obsessed incel who wants to see the world burn. Who's going to win? You gotta see. Also, fun fact, this is created by the creator of Gantz, but Gantz shows up in the background as a manga that this guy is reading. It's kind of cool. Now from here, let's go on to something a little more much more happy, much more nerdy. We're talking about Watakoi, Love is Hard for Otaku by Fujita. And this is a romance series which was nominated for the 44th Kodansha Manga Award. And it's the story of two nerds who end up falling in love with each other. You have one who is a nerd who doesn't want the rest of the world to know that she's a nerd, and a guy who doesn't care if people know he's a nerd, but he's just living his life. And it's them getting in a relationship. I love the fact that he ends up getting her to agree to become his girlfriend is by saying, I'll help you sell more stuff at your doujinshi booth next week. He's like, yep, you're hired. And these two end up falling in love. They're not the only otaku in this as well. You have his superior, who is the nerd who says, I'm not an otaku, but he's the one who goes to a game store at 3 a.m. waiting online to get that exclusive edition. And then his girlfriend, who's a cross player, even though she's a very busty girl, she's able to look like a guy. This is a wonderful, witty, romantic story that is realistic, that is compelling, and more importantly, it is funny as hell. There are so many in jokes and references as well. Like just the fact that you see when he's upset, he looks like Gendo Ikari. I love that. And the ending is, it will put a smile on your face. Definitely will. And so for the honorable mentions, we've got two. One of them is To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts. This is the story of an alternate World War One where we figured out how to create artificial monsters. And after we won the war, we threw those monsters away and tried to destroy them all. The problem is that these monsters survived, and now they're going to get revenge on us. Only person stopping them is the former commander, who was a good man, who is going to hunt down each of his former platoon and unalive every single one of them. On the other hand, we have a story of a woman who has been done wrong by her man. In Wave, Listen to Me. This is about a girl who gets screwed over by a boyfriend, and then she vents all of her stuff and becomes a shock jock. A lot of vulgarity in this, a lot of insanity in it, and it is, if you've ever wanted to rant about life, it is worth reading. We got 9 years to go, and we're at 2015. And in 2015, the influential manga of the year was Cells at Work. This actual story about the cells in your body. Everything from white blood cells, hemoglobin, platelets, all of it. Crazy story. I still say the best characters are everyone's favorite marching platelets who end up fixing your boo-boos. This has been adapted in 3 other ways for Cells at Work Baby, Cells at Work Code Black, Cells at Work Virus. This one is educational in edumanga. From here, we've got After Hours. After Hours, which is going to be kind of cool. This is the story of, it's written by Yuta Nishio, and this is a Yuri series about Emmy, who, she's at a club, it's too loud for her, she's freaking out, and then she runs into Kay. Kay is one of the DJs at this club, and they end up falling in love. This is the story of 2 people who find each other and find a passion in EDM and music. If you like club music, if you like action, you will love this story. If you like Yuri, you will also love this. I will say, though, I do frown on the fact that Emmy is cheating on her boyfriend because she discovers that she wants a girlfriend. But overall, a phenomenal story. I would love to see this adapted into an anime short. We have to wait and see. From here, we've got My Roommate is a Cat. This is by Minatsuki, and this is the story of a human and a cat. And the human is a mystery writer who decides to adopt a cat they find on his parents' gravestone, and he tries to write a story about this cat. And meanwhile, the cat is trying to bother him and give him food. He doesn't know why, but he discovers that actually the cat's trying to feed him, because this manga is split in half. One half is from the point of view of our protagonist, the human, and the other half is from the cat, as she's trying to make sure that he doesn't die. It is a story of 2 lonely creatures finding each other and worrying about this. It's adorable, it's sweet, and it's really funny, especially when let's just say Haru trying to figure out how the hierarchy works is great, because you have Haru and Mina as they try to live this life and they're just fighting with each other. It's heartwarming, especially if you've never had a cat or if you had a cat. Our honorable mentions are going to be Ascension of a Bookworm, about an isekai where an otaku who's obsessed with books gets killed by a bookshelf and ends up in a world where books don't exist, so she is going to make books exist by making them herself. And on the other hand, we have a story about someone working in the book industry. Yes, we're talking about Skullface bookseller Honda-san. If you've ever worked at a bookstore or wanted to work in a bookstore, this is 100% accurate about all the crap you deal with at a bookstore. Next, we have 2016. In 2016, the influential manga is Goblin Slayer. Yes, the story of the Goblin Slayer. This is by Komu Kagyu. And if you've never read Goblin Slayer or heard about this, you are missing out on this horrible, violent series about goblins. And it's a fantasy world where goblins exist, and people are named by their class. So we have fighter, we have ninja, we have all these other people who are involved in this insane world, and they're goblins who do horrible things. This is a very violent series where goblins unalive people and then do horrible things to them. And protecting the world from these goblins is the Goblin Slayer. The Goblin Slayer is an expert at killing goblins. What does he do? He kills goblins anyway how. He makes sure that they all die. Doesn't care what happens. Everything from blowing them up, stabbing them, using scrolls which are supposed to be used for teleportation to drown them. He hates goblins. Why? There are reasons. This is a very trigger warning series that is violent, but it's kind of addictive. Definitely worth checking out. Now, on the other end, something that was commissioned by a very famous museum, by the Louvre, the next manga is one which is definitely one that is beautifully done. We're talking about Cats of the Louvre. This is by Taiyo Matsumoto, published by Viz Media. And this, like I said, was commissioned by the Louvre to be released in a special edition. And it's a story of the cats that live in the Louvre, in the attic. And when you see them, most people see them as cats, but they see themselves as people. It's them when people aren't around, them interacting with the paintings, going into the paintings, dancing around, and it's the story of Snow Babe, who is a small kitten and has Snow Babe grows up. What happens in this? It is very surreal. That's all I'm going to say, but it is one which you need to check out. Then, from this surreal moment, let's get something more realistic. And we're talking about My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. This is an autobiographical story of a young woman who's trying to deal with depression and shyness, and also the fact that she is a lesbian. And it opens up with her first time, and then it gets into all of everything going on with her struggling with depression. This is the story of depression. And I'm not going to lie, it is a very raw and important story to tell. It's her dealing with her depression, her life, and her mental facilities as she deals with everything going out from her starting out to her, well, moving forward. She's written 5 other books since then, all her explaining her life, everything from her getting into food, her training for exercise, her dealing with her alcoholism. This Nabi does not play around. She focuses on this. And if you've ever had depression, if you've ever had any of these issues, it is worth reading. And, it deals with finding routines and dealing with life. That's all I could say about that. Our honorable mentions are going to be Plus Sized Elf, which is, let's be honest, it's a hentai masquerading as an exercise manga where the creator has a very interesting obsession with more robust people. And then To Your Eternity by Yoshitoki Oima, which is the story of an immortal being as he goes through time observing us. Unlike with Yokohama Kodaishi Kiko, where it's a very relaxing story, this is a very violent and vulgar story as we see this character try to survive throughout the ages. It's crazy, it's violent, and I love it. I love where it goes. To Your Eternity goes into such a weird place, and you would guess where it goes. Anyway, 2017, moving on. 2017, the most influential manga is actually, surprisingly, Greta's favorite manga of the recent couple of years. We're talking about Apothecary Diaries by Natsu Hyuga. This is the story of Mao Mao, a poison-obsessed apothecary who ends up working in the inner court of the Emperor's harem. This is a mystery series that does a lot. To hear more about this, check out our review of it, and we're actually going to be doing something special with this in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. From here, we've got A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai. This was written in 2017. This is really cool. This is the story of a Fukumaru. Fukumaru is a cat who was at the pet shop, and it was his last day because tomorrow they're going to put him in the back room. He didn't understand why, because no one wants him. He's an ugly kitty. Until one day, a widower comes in who wants a cat, and he ends up adopting Fukumaru. And this is the journey of the widower who's trying to get past the death of his wife and Fukumaru, who's a big kitty who's found a home. It is cute and sad and adorable and weird and deals with all the things that cat ownership deals with. Like, for example, spending $70 on a really expensive cat house, but the cat decides to sit in the box. Or when you make laundry and the cat sits on your brand new laundry. Or whenever they do something cute and you get the camera out, they turn back to normal. Really insane. Also, fun fact, this series has a live-action adaptation where Fukumaru goes from this very cute, ugly kitty to a really creepy stuffed animal. Why? Because it is. Then, our other recommendation for 2017 is going to be Tokyo Terabera Girls. This is a story of 3 women in their 30s who want to get married before the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And this is them as they are Terabera girls. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Terabera is what if girls. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if he decides to propose to me today? What if I go and I eat this food that makes me sick? What if, what if, what if? This is the what ifs that everyone wonders about, and that's what the story's about. And for her, she has a what if because her former senpai who asked her out, and she said no, has wanted to talk to her. It's taking her to a nice restaurant. She thinks he's going to propose to her, but in reality, he wants to propose to her assistant. It is a crazy, insane story that is, well, very diverse and very, well, I'm not going to get into it too much, but wow. Art is great, the story is very impactful, and it is one of those ones that you gotta just talk about, you know? And suffice to say, this manga is one of those ones where if you're in your 30s, you will get the joke immediately. So let's get into some honorable mentions, and specifically the mentions we're talking about are going to be My Home Hero, the story of a dad who wants to protect his daughter, anyway how, including by bashing her abusive boyfriend with a rice cooker, and Life Lessons with Uramachi-san, a guy who's so burnt out he's decided to tell kids what it is as it is. If you ever wondered what the real life of people who are in kids shows are, this is the one for you. I love the fact that he tells the kids, hey, do all of you know what a hangover is? That's what I have today, kids. Wow, it's a dark and it's funny story. So now we're in 2018, getting near the end. And in 2018, the big influential manga of 2018 was Way of the House Husband, the story of the immortal dragon as he, well, kicks ass, takes names, and is the immortal dragon. It's him being a house husband and him showing the awesomeness it is being a house husband. The big manga that we're going to be talking about is Sweat and Soap, and this one is a romantic story with a very odd premise. The premise is that Asako works in a pharmaceutical company that she loves because she's obsessed with the scents of this place. So she works for this company called Lemon Drop. And what happens is that she works there because she has a bit of a perspiration problem. A lot of people make fun of her because she sweats a lot. Until one day, someone at the company that she works at smells her. This is the lead inventor of the scents of this company. He designs all the different fragrances. And his name is Kotaro, and he's obsessed with Asami's scent. He thinks it is beautiful. And he wants to smell her every day because he's inspired by it. But this is the story of these two weirdos as they end up falling in love. It is a romantic and, well, happy story that is very weird. It deals with the ups and downs of relationships, everything from when you first meet your partner's family to your first big fight. A mature story, with even though it has a weird premise, it is really fun. I will say they're doing a live-action adaptation, and I'm excited to see how this goes. And speaking of adaptations, the next one is one which actually has a film adaptation that is the perfect length for a film. We're talking about Pompo the Cinephile. This is the story of Pompo. Pompo is a young producer for Peterson Studios, and she makes B-movies that are terrible. And her very abused assistant, Jean, is given the chance to direct a movie that she wrote that is going to be the perfect movie ever, a movie called Maestro. And it's the filming of this film and Gene coming into his own as a director. It's also the story. It's a love letter to the film industry of loving films and making movies. If you are a film nerd, this is the manga for you. It really is. And if you're not a film nerd, well, worth checking out anyway. The movie's exceptional and it's great. So let's move on to 2019, shall we? And in 2019, the most influential manga is a story of a psychic, assassin, and a spy in alternate Germany. Yes, we're talking about Spy Family, the story of the Folgers, and won't they figure out what is going on? Will Osteria and Westeros get into a war, or will they save the day? Who knows? And will Anya get enough peanuts and actually save the world? We're going to have to wait to find out. But this is a great story that is for families of all ages. A little bit of romance, a little bit of action, a little bit of spy drama, and also a great anime series. From here, let's move on to something a little more romantic. Talking about Sign of Affection. This is a beautiful story of Yuki. Yuki is a deaf girl, born deaf, and she is in college and ends up running into a man who she falls madly in love with. And this guy's a polyglot. He loves languages. It's this wholesome, beautiful relationship that is built. The creator of this series actually hired a JSL translator to get the hand motions and the mouth movements right to make this so well. And this story is slow, wonderful. I highly recommend it. It's beautiful, like just seeing when Yuki first has her happy dance because he likes her. It's so cute. And as we see them move forward in their life, definitely one of those ones you're going to want to check out. Anyway, let us move on to one which does not have a physical release, but it is amazing. We're talking about Yeah Boy Koming by Yuto Yotsuba. And this is a comedy musical story of the famous military strategist Zhonglang Koming after his death. Because when he dies in 234 AD, he wakes up in modern day Shinjuku thinking he's in hell. And everyone in costume, all the demons, all the crazy people, he freaks out, thinks he's in hell. But he's like, you know what? I've been a bad person. I'm going to deal with my punishment. Until he hears the voice of an angel, Eiko, a young girl who wants to be a great rock musician. And he becomes enamored by this girl. He thinks, this is my demon. But he finds that he's actually been transported to the present and he's young. And he ends up becoming, well, friends with this girl and learns more about the present with it. And as Eiko and Koming become friends, he ends up deciding that he is going to become her tactician and make all her dreams come true. And how's he going to do that? By turning her into one of the greatest musicians and singers of all time, using tactics from ancient times. Everything from the stratagem of the hidden hedge maze to a stratagem of misdirection. He uses all these different stratagems to be awesome. And I gotta say, this series you will be enthralled by. If you want to read more, it's worth it. It is digital only on Kodansha.com. Pick it up. And if you want to watch it, it is on High Dive. It's worth the price for High Dive just to see the series and the movie. Our honorable mentions are going to be Island in a Puddle. This is by Ken Sadabe, the creator of Erased. This is a Freaky Friday situation involving a young boy who is taking care of his little sister while his mom is a deadbeat, and a serial killer who is wanted by the mob, and now they switch places. The other one is Tokyo These Days by Taiyo Terabera. Beautiful story, visually stunning. You have to watch that one. So let's move on to 2020. Yes, 2020, a crazy year where everyone was at home because of the pandemic. That was the major thing of this year. The influential manga was Kaiju number 8, the parody story of Metamorphosis Kafka, involving a guy named Kafka who ends up turning into a kaiju because of getting infected by it, and him wanting to fight kaiju. The anime is amazing, the manga is violent, and it hits that sweet spot of action, adventure, and craziness by Noya Matsumoto. If you have not read this, read it now. Our next one is going to be a horror manga called Night of the Living Cat. And Night of the Living Cat is a horror story in a world where cats are loved by everyone. Who knew? And in this story, a virus appears, which, if a cat rubs against you, what happens? You turn into a cat yourself. Horrifying. So, this is any zombie movie, but replace zombies with cats, and that's what this is. It is violent, it is disturbing, and it's hysterical. There are some moments which it's like, oh, it's a cat crawling through a wall, but they make it look like aliens from Alien. We did the review of this recently. If you want to check it out, it is on our playlist for last episode. So check it out. Next manga that we're going to be talking about is Crazy Food Truck. Crazy Food Truck, this is a post-apocalypse story about a deserter for the military who's created a food truck in the post-apocalypse. And he's helped by a regenerator who regenerates faster than Deadpool does. And this is all about really weird foods. It's a food manga with violence and guns. Pretty cool. And I will say I do have some issues with the bacon sandwich with them putting mayo on top of it. But whatever, I'd say put cheese on top. But there's some great choices like the oven-baked cactus snails or the squid sashimi or the pork buns. Worth checking out if you like apocalypse and violence. And the two manga honorable mentions, we got Sakamoto Days, the story of Sakamoto, an assassin who ends up getting married, gets fat, and now his former teammates are trying to kill him. And then the story of Ron Sakurabare, the grandson of Sherlock Holmes and of Moriarty, who solves mysteries and then tries to kill the perpetrators every single time. Very unique horror story or mystery story. From here we move on to 2021. 2021, there were no real influential manga or honorable mentions because the pandemic was the year before. So the two big ones we're talking about are She Loves to Cook and She Loves to Eat. This is kind of similar to What Did You Eat Yesterday, but this is the story of a food influencer, someone who blogs about her cooking, and a delivery person who is super strong, and the relationship they create over food, because the food blogger doesn't eat a lot of the food and the other one is always hungry, so they create a relationship. The art is questionable, but the story is endearing. There's a live action adaptation that is whimsical and heartwarming. Worth checking out, just be aware that the art is questionable. But again, digress. So from here, let's go to a more melancholy story. And we're talking about one I just reviewed. The last episode I actually reviewed this in, and this was Takopi's Original Sin. This is the story of an alien from Planet Happy. A world where the worst thing that could happen to you is you get in a fight with your friend, you take his happy card, and then you discuss your problem. And this alien has been sent to Earth to spread joy. And he ends up running into Shizuka-chan, a young girl who gives him bread and is his friend, and actually names him Takopi. And this is their story as he tries to make Shizuka-chan happy. He doesn't know why her face is all dirty, or why whenever her classmates show up she hides behind a dumpster, or why her clothes are ripped up, but he tries everything he can to make her feel better. And as he makes her try to feel better, he ends up getting involved in a situation that deals with time, space, and learning about what real hurting is and what feelings are, and how just having a I want to help people mentality isn't enough. If you want to hear more about this, listen to the last review I did. It's going to be the last episode where I talk about this manga to get more into less spoilery territory. But this series does deal with a lot of heavy topics and a lot of elements that are, well, we're going to leave it at that. Let's move on to 2022, shall we? And in 2022, we've got two mangas that are definitely worth recommending. First one is going to be Goodbye Eri. This is created by the creator of Chainsaw Man, and it is the story of a young man who's got a smartphone, and he's been told that he is going to be filming his mother's death because his mom is dying, and she wants him to film and document it. And what happens is he kind of freaks out dealing with this, doesn't go through with it, doesn't finish it off. He's not there when she dies, and he ends up having to deal with the repercussions of this situation. Ends up meeting a girl who's also into films, and he gets inspired to make a story. What else happens? It's a one shot. I'm not going to spoil too much, but this does get into a lot of cathartic truth in what really was going on with him filming his mother's death and her degrade from her being sick, and more importantly, him finding himself. Unlike a lot of the things that he has written, this is a story which feels a little personal and one which is a lot better than Fire Punch, and I think it's a little better than Chainsaw Man, but that's my opinion on this. Anyway, let's get to the next one. So next we're talking about Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You. This is a simple story. It's about a salaryman who's really depressed because his life sucks, his boss yells at him, and the only happy thing that he has is whenever he goes to the supermarket, there's a girl named Yamada-san that he sees that's really nice. It's like the one bright day that he has, until one day he gets there. He goes to get his pack of smokes. Yamada-san isn't there. He's kind of bummed out about it, and he walks away, and a girl outside the supermarket in a leather jacket with piercing says, "Hey, mister, want to come over here and smoke?" And he ends up talking to this girl, and they end up getting a rapport. He doesn't realize that this girl with the earrings and the leather jacket is Yamada. She says she has a different name, and he thinks that this is a different girl, even though it is Yamada. And just, this is what the story is. It's them hanging out and him just dealing with it over and over and over and over again. 4 volumes in, he still hasn't figured it out, and there's no resolution to this. It's a little annoying, but this is a story about just 2 people hanging out, dealing with their stresses in life. That's what this is about. And then we get to 2023. And in 2023, there's only one manga that we're going to be talking about, because there's only one that really mattered last year. And that is Playing Death Games to Put Food on the Table. This is the story of a girl who has been put into several death games in a row, and she wants to hit 100 times. Why? Because she's trying to figure out a secret. And this is a very violent story about a girl who goes through various death games where people die. It's, imagine if someone was in a Saw game, they escape, and they immediately apply to go and do it again because they're getting the thrill from it. There is more going on, but I am not going to get into it because it is very convoluted and long, and my voice, as you can tell, is starting to go. Art is great, the light novel is great, and this is worth getting right now. And from here, we're finally in 2024. And this year, unfortunately, nothing really noteworthy has come out. It's a lot of shoujo and shonen stuff, but nothing really mature and worthy for us. And, well, that was 30 years of manga recommendations for grown-ups. All those are unique stories that are compelling and different and unique. And let's be honest, they've covered everything from cooking manga, cat manga, dog manga, action stories, sci-fi stories, autobiographies, and even some which were a little bit more niche. All these stories are ones which were told, and in the last 30 years since Otakon started, we've seen this huge blossoming of manga stories, and I cannot wait to see where it goes next. So that was our recommendations for grown-ups. If you have any questions, you can email me personally at Zan, that's Xan, @Spiraken.com. Or you can tweet me at Spiraken@gmail.com, or you join us on X.com at, well, X.com/Spiraken. You can go to our website, www.spiraken.com. And more importantly than that, if you want to do something kind of cool, you can remember to like, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notification, and let me know what your thoughts are. Leave comments down below. Anyway, as usual, I'm your host, Zan. I'm Gonzville. Catch you guys next time, and keep reading manga. See you later.